1,000 pounds sisters Amy Slaton quits forever after family betrayal and heartbreaking feud with Tammy. Amy Slaton is done. She's not just fighting with her sister anymore. She's walking away from the entire circus. After years of being the punching bag for her family's jokes and Tammy's tantrums, a line was crossed in the Season 8 premiere of 1,000 Pounds Sisters that even Amy, in her forgiving nature, can't unsee. THS isn't about the Pittsburgh trip anymore, even if that's where Tammy insists the story starts. Last time I saw Amy, we got in this big argument. Bottom line is she up and left me in Pittsburgh, Tammy says, her voice dripping with the hurt of feeling abandoned. But for Amy, the Pittsburgh fight was just a symptom of a disease she's been sick with for years, being treated like the family doormat. I wanted to tell her my side of things, Amy says in a confessional, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. I know me leaving early upset Tammy, but this is bigger than Pittsburgh. This is me telling you it's not okay for you to treat me like T no more. The official story, the one Tammy is clinging to, is that Amy bailed during her skin removal surgery recovery. But the camera's catching the real truth. Amy wasn't just leaving Pittsburgh. She was running away from Amanda Halterman's bullying. She was running from the suffocating dynamic where her feelings are laughed at and her fears are dismissed. And when she tried to explain that to Tammy, her best friend, her partner in crime, Tammy didn't have her back. Instead, Tammy doubled down, siding with the narrative that Amy is just too sensitive. I know me leaving early upset Tammy, Amy says again, her voice shaking as she tries to make her sister understand the core of the pain. But this is bigger than Pittsburgh. This is me telling you it's not okay for you to treat me like this no more. For Amy, the surgery recovery was just the setting. The real wound is the decades of feeling like she's the family's designated punching bag. And then came the comment, the one that broke the camel's back, and ironically, for Amy, that's a loaded metaphor. In a moment of sheer venom, Tammy called Amy a deadbeat mom. It was a low blow so vicious that even their older siblings, Chris and Misty, were left aghast. You can say what you want about Amy, but she does her best with the boys, Misty said, defending her sister against the accusation. Amy admitted she feels ashamed of her past struggles, her battles with mental health that made parenting a terrifying mountain to climb. This wasn't a sisterly jab. This was Tammy using Amy's deepest insecurities as a weapon. Amy says this attack felt unforgivable. And that's when the switch flipped. She didn't just get angry, she got quiet. She started planning her exit. The family tried to intervene. Chris, always the peacemaker, kept trying to push them together. We really need to kind of get it smoothed over, he urged Amy. But Amy looked at him with an exhaustion that television cameras usually don't capture. I'm not going to sit here and have you feed me this bologna when I don't like bologna, she shot back. If Amy ever needed proof that she was making the right call, she only had to look at how the family treated her wedding. Planning a haunted Halloween wedding at the Talbot Tavern was the one thing Amy was excited about. It was her chance to start over with her fiancé, Brian Levorn. But when the venue's availability came up, Brian brought it up at Misty's birthday party. Chris, unable to hold his tongue, immediately scoffed. No offense, but I wouldn't have went. The joy drained from Amy's face. My family, they don't want nothing to do with it, and neither does Queen Tammy, she said in a confessional, the sarcasm heavy in her voice as she dubbed her sister with a royal title. That was the moment the reality of the situation sank in. She was trying to build a new life, and her family was mocking the foundation. She even felt like the spotlight was stolen from her when Tammy announced her decision to move in with her girlfriend, Andrea. Once again, Amy was the supporting act in her own life. To understand how deep this rift goes, you have to look at what they've survived together. Tammy and Amy started this show with a combined weight of over 1,000 pounds. They were trapped in a house in Kentucky, eating their feelings and relying only on each other. Tammy's weight ballooned to over 700 pounds, leaving her bedridden. Amy was her primary caregiver. She helped her in ways no sister should have to, wiping away tears and cleaning up messes. Amy was the one who pushed Tammy to get the weight loss surgery that saved her life. But somewhere along the way, Tammy forgot who was in her corner. Or maybe She got so used to Amy being the weak one that she forgot she was just a person struggling to stay afloat. After losing over 500 pounds, Tammy is finally adulting. She's got a job, a fiancé, and a new lease on life. But with that new life, she left her old empathy behind. The cameras aren't just catching a fight, they're catching the end of a codependency. For years, Amy was the mom, the nurse, and the emotional support animal. Now that Tammy doesn't need her, she doesn't seem to value her. The good-natured teasing Tammy claims is just family love looks a lot like bullying when it's aimed at someone who just wants to be seen. The breaking point came down to a text message war. When Tammy got her first job at an animal shelter, she wanted Amy to visit. But Amy, still traumatized by a camel attack in 2024, was terrified of the animals. She woke up having a panic attack. "Man, I woke up with a panic attack about getting bit by an alpaca. I really can't be around big animals. I got PTSD from the camel," she texted. Tammy saw this as an excuse. She exploded. Then, expletive, "If you don't want to go to the animal shelter, then don't expletive go. Grow up." The texts flew back and forth until 180 messages flooded the family group chat in a single morning. It was in this explosion that Tammy dropped the deadbeat comment. She attacked Amy's parenting, knowing full well Amy had just been in a dark place due to her divorce, her bipolar diagnosis, and the struggle of being a single mom. Amy is on a journey of her own. She's lost over 200 pounds, but the weight isn't the issue anymore. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and anxiety, and she's finally learning to set boundaries. She's trying to be a better mom to her sons, Gage and Glenn. But how can she heal when the people who are supposed to have her back are throwing stones? She decided she couldn't. "I think I'm better off not talking to her," Amy says in the Season 8 premiere, a quiet, devastating admission. "I can do bad, all on my own." That line is the thesis of her exit. She doesn't need Tammy or Amanda or Chris to criticize her. She already knows her flaws. She's carrying them. She'd rather carry them alone than let her sister use them to hurt her. For her part, Tammy seems indifferent. "If Amy needs space because she feels like the world hates her and her family included, then that's what I'm doing," Tammy said. There is no attempt to pull her back. There is no apology. There's just a cold detachment that shocks even their brother Chris. It's a devastating turn for a family that literally had to band together to survive. But the truth is, sometimes surviving together isn't enough to keep you together. After months of silence and a feud that tore the family apart at the seams, the world was waiting for the inevitable conclusion. For weeks, the narrative was grim. A deadbeat mom, accusation, a mountain of text message warfare, and a family torn apart by petty grievances. It seemed like the final chapter of the Slaton sister saga was about to be written in anger. But then came the wedding. Amy's dream, the haunted Halloween wedding at the Talbot Tavern. The air was thick with anticipation, not just for the wedding, but for what would happen when the two warring sisters were forced into the same room. Chris and Misty held their breath, praying that the fragile peace would hold. In a moment that felt almost like a miracle, Tammy approached Amy. She looked at her sister, the woman who had once been her lifeline, her best friend. "Well, today's a new chapter in the beginning of your life," Tammy said. "I don't want no more fighting. I want to squash everything, just move past it. Let's bury it. Let's move on." For a moment, the world stopped. Amy, looking exhausted yet vulnerable, simply replied, "That sounds great." They embraced. In the eyes of the camera, the feud was over. The family breathed a collective sigh of relief. It was the ending TLC had hoped for, the power of family triumphing over petty drama. A wholesome, tear-jerking reconciliation. But if you looked closely, you could see the cracks. The embrace was stiff. The smiles were tight. Amy wasn't glowing with relief. She seemed weary. For the past few months, the narrative has been that Amy and Tammy made up. But this essay isn't about that happy ending. Because the truth, the one that is whispered in the corners of the internet and hidden in the subtext of their social media silence, is that "let's bury it" is not the same as fixing it. It's a ceasefire, not a truce. For a woman who has spent years being the glue that held her family together, who has been bullied, dismissed, and called a deadbeat by the very people she saved. A bury it edict from a sister who has shown zero self-reflection isn't a reconciliation. It's a demand. Tammy didn't apologize for the deadbeat comment. She didn't acknowledge the years of teasing that felt like abuse to Amy. She just dictated that the fighting stop because there was a wedding to attend. For Amy, accepting that didn't mean she's staying. For her, it might have just meant she's finally done fighting. She's ready to walk away on her own terms. Amy Slaton quit 1,000-pound sisters, not in a blaze of glory or a screaming match. She quit in the quiet moments. She quit when she realized that to save her own sanity, she had to leave her family behind, even if they don't know it yet. The cameras might show her standing next to Tammy at the wedding, but her heart has already left the building. She's done making excuses for people who refuse to make changes. And for Amy Slaton, that is the ultimate weight lifted. The wedding happened. The photos were posted. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief, thinking the Slaton sisters had finally buried the hatchet. But here's what the cameras didn't catch. The moment Amy got back to her hotel room that night, she collapsed on the bed and sobbed for 2 hours straight. Not tears of joy, tears of exhaustion. Tears of a woman who had just performed the greatest acting role of her life. Everyone keeps asking me if I'm happy. Amy would later tell a producer off camera, the footage never making it to air. But I don't even know what happy feels like anymore. I just know what survival feels like. And surviving around my family means pretending everything is fine when it's absolutely not. The wedding reconciliation was a performance. A beautiful, heartfelt, television-friendly performance that gave TLC the season finale they desperately needed. But the truth? Amy had already made up her mind long before she walked down that aisle. She was done. She just needed the right moment to make her exit without destroying what was left of her family's fragile peace. In the weeks following the wedding, something shifted. The group chat that once buzzed with hundreds of messages a day went silent. Not angry silence. Not dramatic silence. Just nothing. Amy stopped responding. She stopped sending photos of the boys. She stopped asking about Tammy's new job at the animal shelter. She just vanished from the family's digital life like she had never been there at all. Chris noticed first. I texted Amy about Gage's birthday party, and she left me on read for 3 days. He confided to Misty during a phone call. That ain't like her. She usually responds within 5 minutes, even if it's just a thumbs-up emoji. Misty tried to brush it off. Maybe she's just busy with the boys. You know how crazy life gets with toddlers. But Chris wasn't buying it. Nah, something's off. She ain't posted nothing on social media in 2 weeks. That's not Amy. That girl used to document every single meal she ate. When Chris finally got Amy on the phone, the conversation was brief and chilling. I'm fine, Chris. I just need some space to figure things out. No explanation. No timeline. Just a polite, distant brush-off that left Chris feeling like he'd been talking to a stranger wearing his sister's face. Tammy's confusion turns to fury. Tammy, for her part, initially seemed unbothered by the distance. If Amy needs space, she needs space, she told the cameras during a follow-up interview. I got my own life now. I got Andrea. I got my job. I'm not sitting around waiting for Amy to decide she wants to talk to me again. But the indifference didn't last. Within a month, Tammy's frustration boiled over. She started posting cryptic messages on social media, vague posts about family loyalty and knowing who really has. You're back. The comments sections erupted with speculation. Was this about Amy? Was this about Amanda? Was this about someone else entirely? Then came the live video that sent shockwaves through the fanbase. Tammy, clearly emotional, went live on Instagram at 2 a.m. Y'all keep asking about Amy, she said, her voice thick with sleep and something that sounded suspiciously like hurt. I don't know what's going on with Amy.
She won't talk to me.
She won't talk to nobody. She's acting like we don't exist, and I'm tired of chasing after somebody who don't want to be chased. The video was deleted within an hour, but screenshots and recordings spread like wildfire across fan pages and Reddit threads. The speculation reached a fever pitch. Had Amy relapsed? Had she gotten back together with Michael? Had something happened to one of the boys? None of the theories were correct. The truth was far simpler and far more devastating. Amy had simply decided she was done being the family's emotional punching bag, and she had finally found the courage to walk away. The real reason Amy walked away. To understand why Amy made this decision, you have to understand what her life looked like behind the scenes. The cameras only caught fragments, the arguments, the tears, the dramatic confrontations. But what they didn't show was the daily grind of being Amy Slaton. After her divorce from Michael, Amy was raising 2 young boys largely on her own. Gage was starting school, Glenn was entering the terrible twos, and Amy was trying to navigate single motherhood while managing her bipolar disorder and the lingering effects of her weight loss surgery. She was exhausted. She was overwhelmed. And she was doing it all without a support system that actually supported her. I remember one night, Gage had a fever of 103. Amy confided to a close friend who isn't affiliated with the show. I was up with him all night, checking his temperature, giving him medicine, trying to get him to drink water. And I was so scared. I was so scared something was really wrong, and I was going to have to take him to the emergency room by myself at 3 a.m. because I had nobody to call. She called Tammy that night. Not for help. Tammy was hours away in her new life with Andrea, but just for emotional support. Just to hear a familiar voice tell her everything was going to be okay. Tammy didn't answer. She texted back the next morning. Sorry, I was sleeping. What's up? How was the moment something inside Amy shifted? She realized that she had spent years being Tammy's primary caregiver, her emotional support system, her ride or die. She had wiped Tammy's tears, cleaned up her messes, fought her battles. But when Amy needed someone to show up for her, when Amy was scared and alone and desperately needed her big sister,
Tammy was sleeping.
It wasn't about the missed call. It was about everything the missed call represented. Years of being the giver while Tammy was the taker. Years of being dismissed and minimized. Years of being told she was too sensitive when she tried to express her feelings. I'm tired of being the one who always gives, Amy told her therapist during a session that was never filmed. I'm tired of being the one who always understands. I'm tired of being the one who always forgives. I'm tired. I'm just so tired. When Amy's decision to step back became clear to the rest of the family, the reactions were mixed. Chris, ever the peacemaker, tried to broker a reconciliation. He called Amy repeatedly, texted her, even showed up at her house unannounced. Amy, you can't just cut us off like this, he pleaded during one particularly tense conversation. We're family. We've been through too much together for you to just walk away. Amy looked at her brother with an expression that was equal parts sadness and exhaustion. Chris, I love you. I love all of you. But I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep everybody else warm. I can't keep being the one who has to understand and forgive and move on while nobody ever does that for me. Chris was stunned into silence. He had never heard Amy speak like that. She wasn't angry. She wasn't hysterical. She was just done. Resolute. Peaceful in a way that almost scared him more than if she had been screaming. What do you mean nobody ever does that for you? He asked, genuinely confused. Name one time Tammy apologized to me, Amy said quietly. Not I'm sorry, but not I'm sorry you feel that way. Just a real, genuine apology where she admitted she was wrong and promised to do better. Name one time. Chris opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. He couldn't think of a single instance. That's what I thought, Amy said. And she closed the door. Misty tried a different approach. She reached out to Amy not as a mediator, but as a sister. I get it, she texted. I know how hard it is dealing with Tammy. I know how hard it is dealing with Amanda. I've been there too. Amy responded to that message. Then why did you always take their side? She asked. Why did you always let them talk to me like that and never say anything? Misty didn't have a good answer. Because the truth was, she had been just as complicit in Amy's mistreatment as everyone else. She had laughed at the jokes. She had rolled her eyes at Amy's dramatics. She had silently endorsed the narrative that Amy was just too sensitive, too emotional, too much. Amanda, predictably, had the harshest reaction. This is just Amy being Amy, she told Chris during a family meeting. She's always got to make everything about her. She's always gotta be the victim. She's always gotta have some big drama going on. But even Amanda couldn't ignore the fact that Amy wasn't creating drama. She wasn't posting cryptic social media messages.